Welcome to the Impact Multiplier CEO podcast. If you're a chief executive, or if you think like one, and you want to create exponentially greater impact, then this show is for you. My name is Richard Medcalf, founder of X Quadrant. I coach some of the most successful and impressive CEOs and executive teams on the planet and help them achieve extraordinary results. And no matter how successful you've been in the past, there's always a whole new level of impact available to you. So, if you're ready to play a bigger game than ever before, I invite you to join us and become an Impact Multiplier CEO.
What does it take to move you onto an entirely new trajectory and multiply your impact? What does it take to move from making incremental improvements to making a step change? It's not about having better answers, but about having better questions. I'm Davina Stanley, and I'm here today with Richard Medcalf once again with this new season, Questions to Multiply Your Impact. Hi, Richard. What have you got for us today?
Hi, Dav. Yeah, it's great to be back with this new season. I think it's going to be fun because we are going to dive into questions that shift our trajectory, right? Questions that make us think deeper. What I find when I work with senior execs is that they often come thinking they need an answer to a question that they're wrestling with, but often they actually leave with a better question to be asking, a deeper question, a question that opens possibilities. I think it was Eisenhower who said that he never solved a complex problem by making it smaller and decomposing it. He would always solve it by making it bigger. And I think this is an interesting way, because by making a problem bigger, you start to think about what's the meta level, right? What's a different way of looking at this? What's a better question I could be asking to solve that bigger level problem? And that's where the breakthroughs can lie. And so, in this season, we're going to dive into some questions which will hopefully provoke our thinking, help us engage, to shift, you as the listener and hopefully us as well. We'll play with each other a bit on this and ask ourselves these same questions. Because when we ask those questions, new things happen, new things emerge.
All right, then. Well, what is the first question then? What question have you got for us today?
First question is pretty simple. What do you stand for?
Oh, okay. So can you unpack that for us a bit?
Sure. So what do I stand for? This is important because you can't move others until you've moved yourself. If you don't know in the core of your being what vibrates you, what kind of brings you energy, what sets you on fire, then it's really hard to be a leader leading the charge, right? Where people are going to want to follow you and buy into kind of who you are at a deep level, right? So often we don't do that, right? We kind of play it safe, we stay a bit bland, we don't really communicate what our core convictions are. So here I'm not talking about these kind of bland statements, kind of values, which are good, but they can be a bit generic. What I'm really looking for is something which you're going to suffer for. So what will you suffer for? What would you what is so important to you that you will stand by that, even if it becomes a competitive disadvantage, even if it causes you some personal pain, right? If it is a cost. So, for example, a lot of us might say, honesty is a value, right? Which is good. Although then I have to push you. Well, if honesty is a value, will you remain honest even if your wife says, "Does my bum look big in this?" right, or whatever. In other words, So in other words, you might say, "Well, I'm so committed to being completely honest that I will be, I will sacrifice my pleasant evening with my family, in service of honesty." And perhaps some of us won't go that far. So honesty is a value, but it might not be the thing that we completely stand for at that deeper level, because we might say, well, there's other things which might come in, right? So what we're trying to get to are these fundamental convictions. So let me give you an example about how we get there. So I would say dig into your story. So an example I can tell you about a client of mine. He was a senior CEO. in a multinational, and I was actually working on him, helping him prepare to kind of communicate to his organization. And I said, well, we need to kind of get some of you into this story, right? What is it you stand for? And we dug into his story. When he was, I guess, 18 or so, he was all scheduled. He came from a military family. He was going to go into the army or into the military kind of leadership. And he went to the officer training course or whatever it was, or initial orientation session or something. And he said he was so put off by the elitism that was shown to him, because he came from a military family, compared with other people who hadn't got the same kind of family credentials or background, that he felt this was so unjust that he was being treated better or had more opportunities than these other people, that he left. He totally shifted his life trajectory and went into a totally different industry because he was so viscerally repulsed, if you like, by this hierarchy and favoritism. And so, it's been no secret that in his business, he's really championed diversity and inclusion and this sense of equality in his organization, right? He never really connected it, though, to his story, but it was something that was really important to him, that came from his experiences, and therefore he was not going to move on, right? He was never going to stand for that. It cost him, right? He left school or whatever to go and do something different. So that's what I'm saying. It's something that you stand for so much that you're prepared to suffer for it. And therefore, that's my question today, is what do you stand for?
Okay, so are you thinking about examples for the way we balance work and life, for example? If I'm to think of my own situation, when we moved from one city to another with teenagers, I made a conscious decision to step back and not work quite so hard, to make sure that they transitioned and made that transition smoothly. And people talk about the risk to mental health of young people when you move them at that sort of time. And I thought, well, if I'm on airplanes all the time and I'm not there, then how do I know that they're really on a really sensible, healthy path in the midst of this challenge? So I deliberately dialed my business back for a year while I allowed that to happen. So that cost me in terms of my business.
Yep.
It didn't cost me in terms of my family. It absolutely, helped us have a great transition and helped us move forward in that sort of regard. So I guess that's an example that comes to mind when you're talking about, what will you suffer for? My career suffered, but didn't really feel like suffering. It was a very, very easy decision to make for me.
But there's a cost, right? But it hopefully will be an easy cost because it's what you stand for. So I suppose that I'd like to describe it as a core conviction. So you can say, like, my core conviction is that every child needs their parents to be physically present during their formative years or whatever, right? And therefore that applies to you. So that's it's the choice that you make. But it would also, if it's a core conviction, it would then apply to the way that you manage your team, for example, right? Because it kind of applies to you, right? If it's a core conviction, it's like, no, what I stand for is parents building families and not like letting work put their children onto the second pedestal. And therefore, I want my organization to live that, right? It's not just words on a page for me. It's really important. So I'm gonna like pretty much force my people to go home and see their families at the end of the day, right? I'm not
allow them to make that choice. And I'm not necessarily going to impose that on them, because that would also impinge, I think, on one of my values. But I would allow and make that very possible for them, should they wish to do that. Exactly. I'd encourage them to do that, but I don't think I have a right to.
Well, you can't force.
Force
is the wrong word.
They do that. No.
But the point is, if it's something that's important to you, people are going to know in your organization that this is what you believe and this is what you are kind of recommending to them, right?
Absolutely. So what about you?
Hello, it's Richard here with a quick interlude. These conversations are all about upgrading how you think about creating impact. So here's a resource to help you do just that whilst staying fast and focused. The CEO's checklist for challenging times is a quick way to enhance your thinking and detect blind spots, even when things are moving incredibly fast and you're not sure what's going to happen next. You can get this powerful checklist of 17 world-class strategies by heading to xquadrant.com/go/challenging times checklist with a hyphen between each of those 3 last words. Now, back to the conversation.
What about you?
Yeah. So what do I
What
stand
will
for?
you suffer for?
Yeah, so let me kind of take you back into my story, actually, perhaps. Well, let me give you the headline and then I'll give you the story. So I think on one level, one of the things I really stand for is fulfilling your potential. I guess my core conviction is that when we have gifts, talents, resources, skills, right, and we're in a position to use those, then we kind of owe it to the world to make the world a better place. Okay, that's kind of my fundamental thing. Okay, so and how that works out, right, again, is I left my corporate career to create this business where I really stand for maximizing people's impact, right, hitting the maximize button on competent leaders to make them even more impactful and do more good in the world and in their organizations and create better results and everything else. It's not just about the money, right? Financial reward is part of it for everybody, right? You need finance. It's the fuel that makes everything work in many ways, but the end game for me is always impact, and I want that to be the end game for my clients. So, but if you go into the story, my sister's mentally handicapped. She's still at home. She can't speak. Actually, she's now physically handicapped as well. A long story. So she can't walk. She's had epilepsy. She's got autism. She's incredibly handicapped. Okay, and so in parallel, we started off in the same house as brother and sister. I then went to Oxford. I then went to Paris. Became a partner in a consulting company. Went to Cisco. Set up my own business. Flew around the world. All this stuff. So these very two different trajectories. And so for me, there's this visceral thing in me, which is if you can do all that stuff, if you get this incredible opportunity, don't fritter it away on just making your life comfortable, because not everybody gets that chance. And similarly, my mother, she died at age 59. She actually had an incredible impact. She ran the charity that was responsible for my sister's condition in the UK. She never wanted to really do it. She wanted to just be a mother. That was her kind of ambition in life. But because of life events, she ended up, obviously working with this charity, and she had an incredible impact. So when she died very young, there are thousands of cards that came in and people writing to us saying how much she'd impacted them when they were a new parent and they just had their kid diagnosed. There was a fund set up, a fund set up in her honor when she died. People donated to it, and it was able to pay for respite care for families who had handicapped children. So all this impact came out of somebody who was living quite a modest life in many ways, but was really committed to service and to helping, right? And therefore, these two examples in my very close family of you can have this massive impact through service, and not everybody gets the chance to do that. It really drive me, right? So if I see somebody who's kind of incredibly competent and all they're focused on is, just just worried about their own financial future, even though that they're clearly capable of always providing for themselves, I'm always going to push them out their comfort zone and say, how are you serving your organization? How are you serving the world? How are you going to make the world a better place? It's not just about the financials, right? How can you maximize your impact? So that's, I suppose, what I'm standing for, I suppose, and that's kind of why. So I'm trying to show the link here between you go into your story and you come up with something which is viscerally important, right? So I guess my core conviction is that we all have a new level. We thrive when we change and when we grow. That playing safe and staying in your comfort zone is never really a good idea. This is all who I am.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see that in all the work you do too. So that notion of our personal history can be quite deeply personal too, can't it, when we start to unpack that and really think about what it is that drives us. And I love the way you're describing there about how you don't want to fritter away that opportunity that you've been given to actually help other people. And I think there's a backstory with that for me too, around why do I work with people who communicate complex ideas, and why do I really love helping people who really struggle to distill out the key message that they've got and actually convey that. And perhaps people who feel like they're quite misunderstood. And I can relate that to a very I'm not going to share the detail of it, but someone particularly in my family who really struggled with that, who was terribly misunderstood because they didn't have great communication skills. And it can make such a difference when you do have the luck or the good fortune to actually be given an opportunity, perhaps a framework or some skills that you can then grab and run with and help other people use. It's enormously satisfying, isn't it?
Yeah.
Enormously satisfying.
Let me slow you down on that, Dav. So I think that there's these two levels. One is to really get clear about what those things are, those core convictions. And I would say you might come up with 3, right? You might, if you pushed yourself, you might come up with 5, but I would say you might just be 1, but it's something which you really feel like these are your defining beliefs. You can't kind of get beyond those. You've got to the fundamentals here. It's not something you can prove. It's just something that you stand for. And once you know those, then those are going to start to help you come out of your comfort zone and into what I call your greatness zone. Get over that. What will people think? Etc. What have I got to lose here? And you get out into, I'm on fire when I'm thinking about this. And hopefully you even hear in my voice when I'm talking about these things, it's like, it's really what I'm about, right? This is not just a marketing tactic. It's kind of, I say, if you cut me through like a stick of rock, you're going to find impact or something, like as a core desire.
Tattooed under your armpit or something, Richard.
There we go.
Tattooed
I'll do that. I will do that. And
Oh, don't.
Good. This is mainly a podcast, right? People get to, but here's the other thing is there is also a power in being able to share that. And so, I've got to the stage, I didn't always do it, right? But I'm going to get to the stage where I will share about my sister and my mother, as these are drivers. Again, it's not a marketing tactic. I don't want to use my family as a marketing device, but in terms of, if people want to know who I am and what makes me tick, those are 2 core influences, right, on my life. And so, when you said, I don't want to share it, that's fine. I'm not going to push you to share it, right? But I would say, well, what is it that you could share? And you might be able to share something slightly anonymized, or, so obviously you might want to protect other people, right? So there could be a way of doing it, but there is a power in saying, this is what I stand for, and this is why, and going back to it. And it might not be around, the actual field that you're in, right? Say it might not be around why I stand for clear communication, right? It might be. I mean, obviously it's a key skill of yours, but it might also be something else. You might be saying, well, actually, I stand for, never, always being there for my team, whatever it takes, or something. You know what I mean? It could be something else that's different, but that it's something that is true, that you will be on the phone at 3 o'clock in the morning to your team if they need you. If that's something that's
that one's a stretch.
So
my
cool.
phone's very off. It's very, very off at night. There's something I stand for, and that's sleep. But no, I think just sort of coming back. So it's not that I stand for clear communication. I do, right? But I see that as a tool. I don't see that as being the end game. I don't think, clear conversations or clear documents are necessarily, the thing that I'm standing for. I think what I'm standing for is fine, and going out of my way to do, is to help people who find it very difficult to be clear, and to help unleash their potential. That's the thing that I love to do, and I think is really important to me. It's really really upsetting when people have great ideas that they just don't get forward because they don't have the skills to actually get the idea out there. And so I don't like seeing people really stuck because they can't communicate the thing that really matters to them. That might be a really good idea. I hate seeing really good ideas go to waste.
Right.
But
So
more particularly, I hate that people with really good ideas don't have the ability, just don't have the skill to, or don't know how to make the most of those ideas and share them with the world. So they don't make the most of themselves. I really, think it's really important that I do what I can to help other people make the most of themselves.
Yeah. So if you kind of formulate that a bit, it's that I'll put words in your mouth, so I might get it wrong, but
go ahead.
You'll
be better at it than I am, I'm sure.
No, but it's like, so it's kind of fundamentally like, so what do you believe, right? That's how you, so I believe that that people, people fulfill their potential and have the biggest impact on the world, when they can communicate their best ideas powerfully.
Okay, yeah.
Something like that.
Okay, yeah.
Right. Or I believe that the world would be a better place if the best people got to share their ideas more effectively, or something like that. Because then what you're doing is you're tying into, what do I believe will make the world a better place, right? Like, what do I believe is so important that I want to be part of that, and that I'm prepared to, make myself look a fool in order to help people do that. I'm prepared to give up some of my spare time. I'm prepared to perhaps take a hit on, maximizing my personal income, because there's somebody over here that I feel I can help make a world a better place by helping them. I don't know if it's something like that. I don't know, how does that resonate?
It's a little bit, I think you sort of said help the best people. I think often I'm helping those who don't see themselves as the best, and possibly who other people don't see as the best either. And then, finding the gems within them so they can flourish and they can be seen as the best. So people who have that potential that's hidden, I think that's where I really love to play. And particularly those who haven't come from an elite background, who haven't gone to the best schools, who haven't been given every opportunity, but actually just keep trying, the ones who really give it a red hot go. And they're often not the brightest. They're just really persistent and really determined to have a really good crack at it.
Yeah, so that's great. So there's something in there, right, about helping people. It might be that I believe that that people can thrive, when they're, people thrive when their ideas are heard and acknowledged, or something like that, right? So you might want to play with it, but I think when you kind of really, there's something there, right, that when you start to get that and you start to go, this is it, right? Like, when I'm doing this work, it's important because it's taking somebody and it's changing their life in some way, because they get to communicate their best thinking in a way that actually makes a difference.
Yeah, to go from being misunderstood to being understood.
Right. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, at a personal level, not just around a topic.
Yeah.
I think those two things go together.
Yeah. So this is it, right? So perhaps we can leave the discussion at this point. We've talked a bit about some of our points. You start to see as you go into this and you really tie it in, perhaps looking into your story, but it's trying to find the thing which really gets to that sense of legacy, I think, and values. It's all of this, but what will you stand for, and what will you suffer for, and what are your core convictions that you will stand by even when they hurt? I think that's a key question that every leader should be asking themselves, because it will release commitment in you, and actually will release commitment in the people around you as well, your people, right, who want to be with you on the journey.
No, beautiful. I think it's a really fabulous question and quite a challenging one. So I thank you for asking me that today. I didn't know what the question was until we got here today. So no, I've really enjoyed spending a little bit of time thinking about that, and we'll take it away and think some more. So look, thank you for that. And for those of you who would like to get the show notes, please visit the website www.xquadrant.com/podcast, and you can find the details of this and also other podcasts that have been shared through this series and then also previous ones. So thank you so much, everybody, for being with us today. We've really enjoyed this challenging question. And I, for one, look forward to hearing what the next question is in the next episode and hearing what Richard's got for us in that.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, well, let's leave that a surprise and people will find out next week. And thanks again, Dav. It's been a good conversation, and speak to you next time.
Terrific. Look forward to it, Richard.
Goodbye. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Now let's talk about you. When you're in top leadership, when you're in the biggest role of your career, who supports you at a deep level as you lead others? Who helps you multiply your impact and get to the next level? If you're ready to learn more about our content, our coaching, and our community, then visit us at xquadrant.com.